Calling this meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to our public school board meeting, August 18th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. approximately. As is customary, we begin our meeting with an invocation, which will be done by me. The Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Clarence Thacker. Our mission statement by Mr. John Bowen. Our translation services will be announced by Ms. Belinda Reyes. And at this moment, I will ask for you to please join me in standing up. And I will recite the Serenity Prayer. And it goes, God grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And with that, I'll call on a Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mission statement.
Mission statement of Osceola County School District is inspiring all learners to reach their highest potential as responsible, productive citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Translation services.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Belinda Reyes, and I am here to provide translation services. Buenas tardes todos. Mi nombre es Belinda Reyes y estoy aquí para proveer servicios de traducción.
Gracias, Ms. Regis. And comments from the board. All right, so who wants to go first?
I have none tonight.
You don't want to go? No?
I just wanted to say thank you, a continued thank you to the medical staff that continues to be a part, our Nemours team that continues to be a part of what we're doing, adhering to the CDC guidelines, and then using local data to move this district forward. So I just wanted to say thank you to them. I know they've worked so hard and been such a valuable part of this team, and they're not here every 2 weeks for us to recognize them, but I know they are still a part in helping Dr. Pace and her team, so thank you.
Well said, Mr. Booth. Dr. Pace.
I would just also add again that the local Department of Health, Bianca McCluskey, our local administrator, has just been an incredible partner. She called again today with some additional information about testing. They have a press release that's going out just simply to remind parents and community members about the importance of taking temperatures and monitoring for symptoms and staying home if you're sick and all those other preventative measures. So really doing everything that they can to help us have a safe reopening for schools. I just also wanted to share that, and you know, we'll hear from some teachers tonight about the fact that over the weekend I had an opportunity to engage with teachers from different schools, different levels, who said the 2 weeks of pre-planning had actually been just a huge sigh of relief. I mean, obviously it's something we'll have to talk about with the calendar committee later, and if it works, if it doesn't work, but that they were not having that usual weekend before school starts stress because they knew they had another week. And the training has been rich. It's really given us an opportunity to address very important topics from school safety and health to mental health to equity to our curriculum. And then today was specifically for teachers who are doing simultaneous instruction if they wanted some additional tips and tools from our MITD team. So huge effort from the curriculum team, the MITD team, as well as our teachers and principals for helping us get ready for Monday. So I have to say thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pace. My comments will be brief. We're going to begin our school year in less than a week's time. And this district and this board has done its best under the conditions and the circumstances that we face to provide the safest environment. But I would be remiss if I did not recognize our community and their involvement in our process. The fact that from the very beginning, one of the first conversations that I had with Dr. Pace, which is a private thing, but I will share permission, was how we're going to get the community involved. And Dr. Pace telling me we're going to start with this task force and we're going to move. And we're going to include all the stakeholders that we can in our process. And I think that here we are, we're scared, we're worried, we have everything in place, but we care. We know that there's going to be something that can happen that will happen. And we're going to do our best. But we got here really because we came together as a community to get to this point. And I'm very proud that in our county we have not had the controversies or the news that other counties have had. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've been transparent and that we've included and that we've listened. And there's been a lot of teacher emails that I get, and an hour later, I see Dr. Pace respond. And so we are responding, and we're trying to give you as much. There's some things that we're still working through, and we're still going to get it. We're going to get these things done. But I think that a congratulations goes to the Osceola County residents and everybody who lives here, and I definitely want to include them in whatever success we have. And if we're going to have some pains along the way as we learn more things, let's be patient and at least trust that this school district and this board is going to be listening and reacting and making and improving things down the line.
Chairman Soto, that's called leadership.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Booth. I think that the whole county did well. Yes, Mr. Decker.
I did have a comment, you got me off guard. If I may. I just want to thank all the people in the schools, the administrators, the teachers, all the parents and the other staff that have been there the last, I guess, almost week and a half, but will be there on Monday. Certainly are not oblivious to the fact that people are worried, nervous, scared in those positions, as well as probably a lot of students that will be showing up. But it is tough, we understand that. I'm thrilled that they are there, and I'm looking forward to a great school year with our students. It's going to be rocky, I'm quite sure, on day one and probably day 10, but there will be a day not too far out, hopefully, where things will kind of smooth out and everybody will get in the groove, and hopefully we will, everybody will follow the guidelines that have been set forth and give us our best shot at having a successful start and a healthy start. So, thank you to everyone. Dr. Pace, on down.
I'll see Mr. Decker. All right, so let's go ahead and go on through the agenda. Appointments and transfer. Dr. Pace.
Yes, sir. Board members, as you know, our coordinator for post-secondary career and technical education took a position outside of our district. And so it is my pleasure tonight to bring forward a recommended transfer. Currently the assistant principal at ALCO, our Adult Learning Center of Osceola, Mr. Tim Burdett. You may remember that Mr. Burdett was a mainstay in our CTE program upstairs, has been instrumental in helping us to build STEM. In ALCO, he's also learned the adult ed component, and I think he'll be in a great position to serve in a right-hand position to Mr. Arnott, our executive director. So I'm pleased to recommend Mr. Tim Burnett for your consideration as a transfer. Lateral move.
So moved.
Okay.
Motion to approve by Mr. Thacker, second by Ms. Castillo. Board, is there any comment, questions? None?
Tim's great.
Very well, then we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Vote passes 5-0.
That's it, sir.
Right, so our next agenda moment is our open for public comment. I do have the request for public comments here. Let me start with Mr. David Woods.
Hi.
Mr. Woods, if you
Sure.
could please approach the podium, and
Thank you.
we're going to, we have 3-minute limit on comments.
Okay, I'll just be very brief, actually. I worked for Disney for 30 years as an engineering manager, and I'm retired now, so I have time to get involved in some things. So I've taken an interest in my community. Been here about 40 years. Moved here in '80, actually, when Epcot was being built. So I'm kind of interested. I live right across some property that y'all are trying to sell. 25 acres behind Lakeview Elementary School. And I know, I think Rhonda Blake is doing the bidding for you or putting it out to sale or whatever, and they have a broker that they've hired to do this. My concern and some of the concern of the other citizens, I've talked to the HOA and Lakeview Village community. We're concerned with the uncontrolled growth that's going on in our community and our county. And we kind of are hoping maybe we can redirect it to a park, a soccer field, bike paths, something else besides a developer getting in there, potentially getting it rezoned to an R4. I mean, that's possible, which would put 18 residents per acre in that property, 450 potential dwellings, townhomes up to 3 stories high. 900 cars, I would estimate usually a family has 2 cars per family of 450. That's an extreme, but it's a possibility. So I just wanted to put in your minds possibly something else to do with that property besides sell it to development. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Woods, you are St. Cloud resident, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll put that into the record. Our next speaker, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. I'll call Ms. April Isaacs. Good afternoon.
Good.
You want to read just your name into the record and your address?
Absolutely. April Isaacs, 1911 Kings Point Boulevard, Kissimmee, Florida, 34744. I speak as a public citizen. In times of great trauma or travesty, I always think back to what comforts me. And people, places, religion, all give me comfort. I think we can all agree that, as I think you so eloquently said just a minute ago, we're working through what we have to work through. So I think back to my first principal here in Osceola County. Mr. Tim, I know you're going to remember, and Mr. Boyd, Penny Neuer. I am full of Penny Neuerisms because I think that she was probably the best teacher, not principal, but teacher I ever met. When she interviewed me for hire, she once told me a story about a train. She said, April, education here at Horizon is like a train. Some kids are going to be driving the train in the engine. Some kids are going to be struggling, holding on to the caboose. And then you always have those knuckleheads who are in the club car and the sleeping berths. But we are all going to arrive on the same train together. And I really want you to hear that from me, because Penny was a major influence on me. I want you to know that I believe, and I'm going to start out with the positive, that this board can do something tremendous that maybe has never even been done in the eyes of your employees. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. And I call that righting the house. Because Penny had another saying. She'd say to us, if your house ain't right, then you're not going to be right with those kids that you teach. I believe that this board, listening to their constituents, can right the house that I think isn't so straight. Let me give you some examples. Number one, when teachers are so worried about what they're going to do with their own kids that they have to put them into digital learning, but they can't stay at home to do digital teaching because they can't afford it, and they're worried about what's going to happen to those children of theirs while they're trying to take care of others digitally, it doesn't make sense. The house isn't right. Teachers need to feel like they have some sort of control over their life, over their house. And they're not feeling that way. Number two, when ESPs barely make $10 an hour, and soon we will have Disney workers making much more than that, our house isn't right. Now remember, I don't blame any of this on you, or anybody for that matter. But I do believe that we have the power to change things if we simply take a look at things from a different light. Number three, beginning of last year, we had some ladies here very eloquently talking and speaking about VPK. They're working for less than $10 an hour, and yet they're actually forming and helping to build the foundation of children that are coming to us in schools that will one day lead our country. And they make less than minimum wage sometimes. Number four, I know it's a small thing, but I don't think it's a small thing. Maybe it's a small thing to people who aren't worried about COVID. I've already expressed my feelings, and I won't go back to that. You know how I feel. Recently, I was in the hospital to have a test. I went into the registrar's office. She had a face mask on, she had a face shield on, and she was behind plexiglass. And all she was doing was handing me papers and pens and then taking the pens back and sanitizing, and she had gloves on. And I started to think, how many people do you think she saw that day? Maybe 150? Some of us are gonna have 150 kids in our classroom, and all we're being asked to do is wear masks. Now, we haven't been told we can't wear shields, but a lot of counties are using plexiglass, and they're sectioning off different sections of the classroom to make sure that they can keep as little contact, or as least contact they possibly can, from others. It makes a lot of sense to me, but I haven't seen or heard anybody talking about this. Number 5, our house isn't right when senior teachers, sometimes in their 4th, 5th, all the way to the 8th year, aren't going to make as much money as new hires. And that leads to number 6. Then you turn around and ask those same senior teachers to mentor these new hires. Our house isn't right. It's not our fault. We didn't have the governor didn't ask us how much to give for new hires. But you understand, teachers don't care about that. Teachers have said to me and to others, we don't care what happens in Orange County. We're not caring about Volusia. We're caring about Osceola. The house isn't right. We have to help you, and you have to help us make the house right. Last but not least, it seems like a small thing, but I haven't heard any school report on this yet. Bathrooms. Paths for kids to go to bathrooms. Now, elementary school, it operates a little bit differently. But middle and high schools, you get passes, you go to the bathroom. You're going to tell me kids aren't going to actually coagulate in there like a bad bloodstream and stop and chew the fat and take off their masks, and that's all it takes. Doesn't matter how safe we are in the classroom. Look, Penny Neuer taught me a lot, and she taught me not to panic. We will write this. But I'm asking you when we're going to write it. And how can we help you write it? Because our house isn't right, folks. It just really isn't. You still have people out there, as you so eloquently put it, scared. Are we just going to let them drown in fear? I know you better. I know that you can make some better decisions. I know that as a team right now, regardless of who sits here in 3 months, you guys can do something. You guys can listen and you can help. I know you've heard us. Sometimes it takes us looking at something differently. We talk about the rainy day fund all the time. We say we can't do it because we can't use it as renewing funds for teachers, for bonuses, for salaries. Why can't we? Isn't there another way? You're all learned professionals. I trust you. I voted for you. Please help me. Please help us. Let's write the house, folks. Very nice.
Ms. Sarah Liu? Good afternoon.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Leung, address 1824 West Virginia Drive, Kissimmee, Florida 34744. I have a very important tool with me tonight. Mr. Thacker, could you please describe this to me?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper roll. Cardboard tube, right? Okay. I'm gonna let that sit there for just a second. We're gonna come back to that in a minute. Today was the school's 7th day back in the classroom. For 7 days, teachers have looked at each other a little bewildered. We have seen our schedules change, some more drastic than the others. For 7 days, we have still been looking for something stable enough to hang on to for the coming year. So far, our stability is that students are arriving on August 24th, ready or not. Teachers by nature are planners. It is actually a major part of the description of our job title. So this unknown, this changes. It causes anxiety. It causes unease. Currently, I could provide a job description as follows. try to stay alive during a pandemic while attempting to socially distance 30 students in a room that can physically only fit 22 with the reduced safety measure of only 4 feet from center of head to center of head. Still do active shooter drills while having a 1.5 years worth of growth in 9 months, which is technically really only 6 until exams begin, and also be front lines on identifying trauma. All while many educators aren't even sleeping or eating or taking care of ourselves properly, because teachers are humans too. We have also lived through this last 6 months as well, many of which have faced their own trauma during this time. Now, brought this up in the beginning, and it's kind of an important tool. See, this is sort of what teachers get handed year after year, less and less we're able to use. Teachers aren't only planners, though. When we are handed something so simple as a toilet paper roll, a cardboard tube, we become innovators. In difficult situations, we change, we adjust, we listen to, and we talk the best we can with our local administration team to help not only our students, but our colleagues that we work with. Teachers across the county have stepped up and offered to teach hybrid classes. Guys, I did the training today. This is not an easy task. I need my phone, a second computer, and my original laptop as a teacher to make this happen. But this is a task that many were willing to take on in order to reduce class sizes, to increase safety precautions for students and teachers alike. But this idea was declined, somewhere above the immediate administration of schools. Teachers were handed a disinfectant for their room, Roxy-HDOX, but not given further information, nor an SDS sheet, one of OSHA's requirements. I spent over an hour on OSHA, EPA, and third-party private websites to learn everything I could about this disinfectant. As a mother with multiple children in the system, I wanted to know what was going to be on my children's desks, how it should be handled, and what I needed to know about it. I also wanted to protect my own students. This information shouldn't have taken me on my own time. It should have been part of a training in receiving it. In the past week, while we didn't get trained on the disinfectant, we were able to do things like take trainings on engagement strategies from 6 feet apart. But going back to what I said at the beginning, very few middle school and high school classrooms are seeing 6 feet between their students. You've had since March 13th to begin a plan, to implement a plan, and to finalize a plan for the future. A future that whether August 24th or later would be a return to school amid a crisis, amid a cultural revolution, and amid a global pandemic. You had made your decision even before the June 30th meeting. So if you didn't start planning in March, then at least from the time the decision was made public until now, you've been able to plan. You've been able to act as leaders, which I asked of you 1 month ago now. But instead, when the cardboard tube was handed off, you saw the cardboard tube. You see, science teachers see this and think, I can use that as a lab experiment. And your agriculture teachers see it and they say, I can cut it in half and fill it with soil and put a seedling in there and make it grow. When your elementary teachers see a cardboard tube, they say, we can make superhero cuffs and binoculars for the children to experience things. And when your art teachers see it, they know that it can be shaped and molded into fine art sculpture. It's not a cardboard tube to us because we are innovators. Your teachers are your most valuable asset, and until we are part of the discussion,
I think she's coming to the conclusion.
you will miss the best part of what we have to offer. A small group of teachers, perhaps a PLC to work with the board, should be part of every conversation because we see things a little differently than you do. We're teachers. We look out for one another. We fill in gaps. We tie the loose ends that are flapping in the wind when people didn't consider all the things that happen in a classroom. So I'll finish this evening by asking again. Please, be a leader. Be a leader who cares about your teachers so that we can care for our students because that is what we want to do. Be a leader.
Thank you. Mayor Allen, good afternoon, sir.
Hello, I'm Larry Allen, 618 Robin Lane, Kissimmee, Florida.
3 minutes more or less.
Yeah, we got the stopwatch right here.
3 to 7.
3 to 7. Thank you.
Ready, go. Again, good evening, school board, Dr. Pace, Osceola County residents, and to the contrary, teachers and ESPs, we do want to go back to work, but we want to do it safely. We do miss our kids. I saw one of my kids last week. They're almost 30 now, but it did my heart good to see my kid because her success is kind of like my success, you know? The FAA lawsuit is not about closing schools. It was about returning local control to the elected officials. That's you guys. Returning the power back where it belongs, which is here in Osceola County, the people that voted for you all. Unfortunately, the Commissioner of Education has threatened our school board and the people of Osceola County. If you don't have a brick and mortar school open 5 days a week, you stand to lose tens of millions of dollars. So that puts you all in a tough position, and I understand that. I have to believe, though, if that threat wasn't there, that y'all would do just a little bit more, or you might plan a little differently so that our teachers and staff and students were safer. As for myself and OCEA, I didn't start it, I'm sorry. I guess you got it. I'm telling on myself. We're not asking to go 100% distance learning. We're not asking that, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out how all these smart people in Osceola County haven't figured out a way that we can protect our most vulnerable people that are working for us. You know, the CDC talks about people with cancer, type 2 diabetes, immunodeficiencies. Those people need to be protected. You know, and I understand you have to draw the line somewhere. You can't just let everybody say, you know what, you can go online, you can go online, you can, because the parents had to say too, where they wanted their child to learn from, right? I get that, but where is that line? I would say 1 death in Osceola County is too much. That's what I would say. You know, but where is the line? Is it 5 dead, never coming back? Is it 5 that are infected? What about 10, 20, 200? Where is that line? And I understand that we have taken measures to make it less risky to go back to the brick and mortar schools, but are they enough? Because sometimes I feel like we're a little loose with the CDC guidelines. Sometimes I feel like the CDC is a little loose with their own guidelines. The bottom line is we're counting on you all so that Osceola County does not become another Martin County. 4 days back, they had 12 staff infected and 120 students. Again, we're counting on you so Osceola County doesn't become Georgia. 25 positive cases, 500 out of 1,800 students quarantined. Again, the FAA lawsuit was hopefully it'll rule in our favor. And when I say our, I mean Osceola County. So that takes the pressure off of y'all. And maybe you'll make decisions based solely on the data so we can keep everybody safe. Thank you for your time. We value life over money. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. I think Dr. Pace will back up on this, you know. The most calls that I've received over the past month have been anger from teachers, personal teachers that we imposed a mask all day rule. So I've heard from more teachers that don't even wanna wear a mask at all. Now look, and I'm not for that, I'm for wearing the mask. But they don't show up here at the school board meeting. I've got 65% of the community, I think, Dr. Pace, if you'll correct me if I'm wrong, going back to Harmony High School. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
65%. So I know, my two daughters happen to be part of that 65%. So I just want to make that clear as we move forward, what I'm hearing from my community and from the teachers that are reaching out to me. They aren't showing up here to speak, but they are the folks reaching out to me. I guess I'll have to invite them to come. They probably won't. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that was it.
You know, years ago, as a child, I always wanted to be a scientist, a medical doctor, perhaps. I was one of those nerdy kids that got like and because my parents kind of saw that I did good in school, they used to get excited. And when we could scrounge up something like for a birthday, they think of giving me a chemistry set or something like that. Hey, come on, what's the fun in that? But there it was, and I read through it and went to the library, and so science has always been in my heart. The math I just do for fun. Anyways, I'll try to be a little bit, don't want to be too heavy with this comment, but here's the thing. You know, I got a chance to be a scientist, and I worked with data. And I worked with, actually, I was researching childhood respiratory disease and trying to find indicators or surveillance systems of those students of those young kids, mostly elementary school, that had undiagnosed respiratory problems and be able to get them, you know, into the healthcare system. Los Angeles, very diverse, very large county, millions and millions of people. I mean, it's a different field than here, trust me. But I never ever struggled. I don't remember ever struggling in a meeting or in a report or talking to a principal or the superintendent when I used to go or with the medical directors. I don't remember ever struggling about the science. If somebody was to tell me that, you know, in 2020, we would have an epidemic or pandemic where there would be differing opinions about science and a virus, I would have said, you're crazy. That cannot happen. I know the folks at the CDC, at the NIH. I taken their training. I had the certificates for epidemiology, all that stuff. Man, we don't think that way. Our political leaders will never, ever try to interpret things other than what we're telling them because we're the scientists and we are guided by science, the math, the physics, the chemistry, the biology. But yeah, here we are. And we do have, and I think this goes to Mr. Booth's point, is that we have a society where we cherish that freedom of actually having an opinion on science. But it is. And with that, I'll go on to the rest of the agenda. At this point, we're going to recess for a public meeting. I think the floor is yours, Mr. Boyd.
Well, you gotta convene that public hearing.
I just did it. Recess and convene.
Good evening, school board members. Tonight, we're bringing back to you the same changes and revisions that we brought to you at the workshop. I'm going to read into the record a summary, and then I'll ask that we pause for an opportunity for public comment since it's a public hearing on these changes, and then ask for your action on these changes tonight. The first change is to the cover page of the school board rules. It updates the year to 2020-21. Then there is a revision to Rule 8.10, Safety. It revises the policy language to implement changes within State Board of Education Rule 6A 1.0017, School Environmental Safety Incident Reporting, SESR, Florida Administrative Code. The remainder of the changes are from the Student Progression Plan. The first change, the changes in general revise the policy to comply with recent changes in state law and provide consistency with district precedent and current practice. The first change on page 1 also updates the year to 2020-21. Page 3 updates the acknowledgements page to reflect the changes in school district administrators. Page 13 adds the section Introduction to clarify the statutory purpose of the SDOC Student Progression Plan. Page 17 adds an introductory paragraph to clarify the residency requirements are pursuant to requirements within Section 1002.31 Controlled Open Enrollment, Public School Parental Choice, Florida statutes. Pages 18, 19, and 20 all deal with citations, either deleting them or adding them. Page 23 deletes language to comply with requirements within Section 1006.15 Student Standards for Participation in Interscholastic and Intrascholastic Extracurricular Student Activities Regulation, Florida statutes. Page 25 adds language to the attendance guidelines section in order to comply with Section 1003.21, paragraph 2B2, school attendance, Florida statutes, and State Board of Education Rule 6A-1.09515, excused absences for treatment of autism spectrum disorder, Florida Administrative Code, which requires school boards to adopt a policy authorizing a parent to request and be granted permission for absence of a student to receive therapy services for treatment of autism spectrum disorder. Page 32 adds or equivalent documents to curriculum guides paragraph. It adds student performance standards in Florida to clarify references in state law. Deletes obsolete language. Page 36 adds the section elementary school recess to codify the elementary recess plan into formal policy and address requirements in Section 1003.455 physical education assessment, Florida statutes. Page 41 amends the section title to read differentiated student programs. Page 44 deletes duplicate section home education. Pages 55 through 56 add language to comply with requirements within Section 1002.41 home education programs. Page 61 updates the cohort years in the section high school graduation requirements, alternative education programs. Pages 62 through 64 clarifies language within the section possible assessments. Pages 84 through 85 delete obsolete language. Page 90 adds language to comply with requirements within Section 1006.15 Student Standards for Participation in Interscholastic and Intrascholastic Extracurricular Student Activities Regulation, Florida statutes. And the last change, page 119, adds the school district's non-discrimination notice as required by US 34 CFR 100, Section 1000.05 discrimination against students and employees in the Florida K-20 public education system prohibited, equality of access required, Florida statutes, and State Board of Education Rules, Chapter 6A-19, Educational Equity. Those are the changes that we're bringing to you for a decision tonight, Board. I'd pause at this time to allow the chair to call a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. So, I don't know if there's any member of the public that wants to question, comment, or have any discussion on the topic about any of the rules. I do not see any from the public. Board, does anyone have any or any questions or comments for Mr. Boyd?
My comment's the same as usual, John. You're doing a great job. You always make sure we're informed before we get here. We have access to information. You always do a great job providing a summary and overview of the changes that we're considering.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We don't have a motion to make at this point. We do. To adopt, okay, we're adopting, okay, very well. Well, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
By Ms. Castillo, second by Mr. Weissier. Okay, board would take a vote. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you,
And with
Board.
that, we'll conclude. Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will adjourn the rulemaking meeting and reconvene our public meeting. And it brings us to agenda modifications. Let's move.
I do have one. I would like to, let me get to it. Sorry, I'm still working on the computer here. I believe it's 10.09. I'd like to pull that from consent and add it to the regular agenda. I'll let Ms. Culver here tell us where we think we should add that.
It goes under business and finance.
Business under number 15.
Very well. 10.09 to 15. All right, anything else, Ms. Whiteside? I'm fine, Ms. Castillo?
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda with the removal of 10.09 due to the regular agenda.
So we have a motion by Mr. Thacker to approve the consent with a second by Ms. Castillo. Board, I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. And so that will bring us to informational items which are in the packet. 1401 and 1402. And number 15, business of finance. Let's take care of the first one, 15.01. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Motion to approve 15.01 under business and finance by Mr. Weiss.
I do have some discussion as well.
Second by Mr. Booth with discussion.
Dr. Page first.
If you don't mind, Chair, I had some additional information to share with the board.
Yes, please do.
As presented, when we had done the initial calculations for both symptomatic testing and pool testing, we were looking at about a $2 million investment over the course of 6 months, which clearly had not been in our proposed budget. So it would be something that you all had considered discussing about coming out of our fund balance as an emergency expenditure to help us have safe return to school. On a good news note, the Superintendent's Association a week and a half ago had written to the commissioner requesting assistance for districts with testing, and that appears to be gaining some traction. I don't believe that we necessarily, if you want to do pool testing, we would still need a contract with Applied Ingenuity. However, the Department of Health called me today, and they are going to be able to do symptomatic testing for us, for both students and staff members, with a 48-hour turnaround. They would actually provide us with the test kits, train our school nurses or our district RN or the 2 LPNs that we've talked about adding on staff with our CARES Act dollars, so that they could do that, take the swabs, get them back to the health department, ship to the lab, and get those results back, which would significantly impact our quarantine procedures and where we wouldn't be another Martin County or another Georgia in the event that we have a positive case. Bianca did want to share with me some information about pool testing. I know I had talked with you about that briefly. And right now, the state does not have the equipment to scale it up, but the CDC has said this: pooling should be used only in areas or situations where the number of positive test results is expected to be low. For example, in areas with a low prevalence of SARS-CoV-2 infections. The prevalence of COVID-19 in a population also affects the efficiency of pool testing strategies. In general, lower disease prevalence may enable a laboratory to use a larger optimal pool size. A recent study by the Nebraska Public Health Laboratory found that nucleic acid tests for SARS-CoV-2 reliably returned a positive result when 1 positive sample was mixed with 4 negatives, which could reduce the number of tests needed by 50%. In certain scenarios, such as a COVID-19 prevalence of 5%. However, as the prevalence of COVID-19 increases, the cost savings of a pooling strategy decreases because more pool tests will return positive results, and those specimens will need to be retested individually. So that was cautionary from the CDC and our local Department of Health. I will share with you that our data in Osceola County continues to trend downward. Since July the 15th, it has steadily trended downward. And as of today, the positivity rate was 7.5%. For the last 7 days is at 9.1%. So we're not at that 5% number yet, but we're moving in the right direction. So I would still certainly support the recommendation that's before you tonight to have a contract in place to provide pool testing. I would hope that we would then be able to use the local Department of Health for symptomatic testing that would still provide reasonably rapid results. The key piece that we all have to remember with tests is that the test result is basically a moment in time. If somebody takes their test on Wednesday, gets their results on Friday and it's negative, and then decides to party like a rock star all weekend, or go to the basketball court, or the other types of things that kids will do, they could easily be positive the very next week. So that's just something we're gonna have to continue to remember. The behaviors that we all exhibit in our community, in our homes, in our activities are critically important for a safe reopening of school. But I know that testing was important for the board. We feel like the company with whom we've, gained information and have a contract for your review and potentially approval tonight is a solid one. But that's kind of an update on where we are with the testing.
Thank you, Dr. Pace.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Dr. Pace, we are going through a signed release. I mean, I'm sure we are. I'm actually just bringing this up for community purposes. If you are a parent of a child, you do have to sign a release for that child to be tested and be part of the pool test.
Absolutely. No student would have a test without their permission. It is a throat swab rather than a nose swab. And for staff members, again, they would also have to consent for testing and sign a HIPAA release that would allow the district to get their results. But that's as far as the medical information would go.
Thank you for clarifying that. I knew the answer, but I wanted you to say that publicly.
Mr. Thacker.
I guess I hear what you're saying with the 48-hour turnaround, but I believe we had an agreement for 24 to 36 hours. I have a little bit of a problem going backwards to 48 hours.
Well, and the contract as written allows us to do whatever testing we want, both asymptomatic, symptomatic, pool testing, and antibody. It's just a matter of the direction from the board of which way you want me to go.
Is there any chance we can get the health department to speed theirs up by some, maybe not as much as we'd be paying these other people, but supplementing or something?
Our local Department of Health is dependent on the state bureau for those results processing.
Yes, I had a daughter that got tested through the health department, and it was not the 5 to 7 days, and it was not 14 days, it was almost 20 days.
The other
What are we
thing,
gonna do when they don't ever meet their 48 hours?
well, and that is something that we would have to consider. Should the board approve this contract tonight and we start seeing something with the Department of Health that the 48-hour turnaround is not really practical or feasible for what they can do, we have the option of coming back to Applied Ingenuity for our symptomatic tests. In addition, I shared some information and will continue to share it. They have added locally a state testing site out at Walt Disney World that is free for anyone from the public, and they've indicated that they would also prioritize results for school board staff members and students.
If we sign the contracts, I'm not sure how the volume, can we approve this contract so it's in place, but send our volume to the health department if we need it?
What we can always do, sir, is have a contract in place that allows us to have test results processed through here. We can start with the testing strategy that uses the Department of Health for symptomatic, pool testing for asymptomatic, and then see what happens, and then always come back to the board and change strategies.
Yeah, members of the board, I just qualify one thing. I'd authorize Dr. Pace to change strategies and not have to wait
Please.
to come back to the board because those days could be critical.
And we know that this is a fluid situation, as Chairman Soto referenced. I mean, the science continues to develop around this virus. The science continues to develop around testing and reliability and speed of results and all of those things. So I think with the board's permission, if you allow us to work with our medical experts, work with Bianca at the Department of Health to adapt our strategy, this would at least provide the provisions in place to offer some greater assurances to students and staff.
Provided there's no minimum that we have to meet with the contract.
There is no minimum.
Approval of the contract, with giving Dr. Pace, authority to rapidly change if the need is there, not waiting for next board meeting.
I second the discussion, but I recognize that Ms. Castillo still has.
We already have a motion and a second on the floor, I believe, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Castillo.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Actually, Mr. Booth and Mr. Thacker, thank you for your discussion because it kind of answers some of my questions as well. I just wanted to go through exactly what we're doing for my own knowledge, but also for the public. So we are approving the contract with Ingenuity Diagnostics for pool testing, right? But we are also with the understanding that the health department will help us as well with testing for asymptomatic.
Symptomatic. I apologize that I get those words mixed up. But folks who are exhibiting potential signs of COVID or who've had direct exposure who want to be tested, we would start sending to the health department.
Okay. All right. And this will be regardless of the rotation that is stated in the pool testing that we are seeing before us, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and just one more question with regards to the consent. This may have been in the contract and I either forgot or didn't read. Are we sending release forms with students? How are we getting the permission from parents to have the students participate in pool testing?
Once we've identified the random sample of students at a particular school, we would send the permission slip home that night and have them come bring it back the next morning.
Okay, so there is a critical period for the students to return it back to the school within 24 hours to participate. Okay.
We send 5 home, what are we gonna do back?
Probably gonna send 20 home, hoping 10 come back, I would think.
I mean,
Why don't we just do it at the beginning of the year?
Beginning of the school
To
year?
every
Yeah,
student, and then see who we get back.
I don't know what that entails,
We certainly can.
but I see this being a
Yeah.
major impediment to anything
I
passed.
feel
I have
that
to
would be-
sign like 8,000 documents before the
Yeah.
school starts every year. Why not? Huh?
30 times you gotta fill the same.
Yeah, so why don't we just send it home? We may not have time to include it in those packets.
We don't have time to get it in the first day packets, but we can send it home the first week. And we just hadn't thought through that procedure, so I appreciate your helping us problem solve around that piece.
That's a good idea. I think I'm also.
It's actually probably better that it's not part of the documents there,
Yeah, I
because
don't want it to
everybody
get
thinks those are
lost.
standard, and this
Yeah.
is definitely not standard,
Right.
so.
We'll want to provide some additional information, I'm sure, so.
Vice Senator, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Some of this discussion already answered some of my questions. Actually, Frank, mine's more so for you. In the contract, there's a 90-day notice to cancel.
Yes.
Two things I want to touch on. Number one, and I think this was already answered, there is no requirement of exclusivity in this, meaning we have this contract in place, but we can at any point in time use any testing approach, service provider, or methodology we want to use. This just happens to be one that we'll have a contract in place for.
Exactly, and I would tell the board that based upon the latest developments, I'm gonna further clarify it, that we don't have any requirement of any minimum to make it very clear to them.
Sure.
Right, this just broke first, so we will tweak that also.
And then the second part is on the 90-day, I recognize we're using somewhat standard language in the right to cancel on both sides. Should that be that way, or do you think it should be less of a time period to cancel, or does it really matter, being that we could go out and bring on another vendor anyway?
As long as we're not required to provide a minimum, we're just not gonna give them work.
Sure.
So I wouldn't argue about the 90 days. We just wouldn't hand them any new work. I think the important thing is that they clearly understand and they don't get misled by lack of it. We're not guaranteeing you 1, 100, 50, whatever.
Sure.
We retain the right to decide, Dr. Pace, what goes and what doesn't.
And then to follow up, Dr. Pace, on Mr. Thacker's question, as far as the 24, 36, 48, is 48 the maximum benchmark that we're using, but the expectation is that they would respond quicker, but they're not obligated to, or what? Walk me through the 24, 36 turnaround expectation as opposed to the 48-hour.
Applied Ingenuity has told us 24 to 36 hours. The Department of Health today said that their bureau could turn around results from 48 hours.
Okay, so then Mr. Kruppenbacher, regarding the contract, is there anything that we need to do to, or, cause I don't see that language in the contract in my review of it regarding the 24 to 36 hour turnaround. Should there be language added to that regarding that expectation?
Actually, I was just going back through it. I know what was represented, but based upon the dialogue tonight, I will make sure everything that you've covered gets in this document.
Okay, so then, I don't know who the motion maker was, but I would just
I think it was you.
oh, well then there you go. I would submit to the motion maker that
See what he says.
that would embody the intent of the motion, is everything that we just outlined. Mr. Kruppenbacher providing the second is on board with that, and the board approves it, and that would include specifying the language around the turnaround time for the testing.
And Mr. Weishauer, would you also include Dr. Pace's authority to adapt
Yeah.
immediately based upon the developments?
That's second in the motion.
Yeah, that is the intent of my motion.
Approve of that.
All right, so we do have a motion with specifics by Mr. Weissier, seconded by Mr. Ruth. We have our discussion. I'm gonna call for a vote. All those in favor to approve this item, please state aye.
Aye.
Vote passes 5-0. I have comments on it, but I'm gonna wait till the end. Next is, yeah, there's a reason for that. 10.09. 10.09, Mr. Booth, you're the one.
Actually, can we have discussion on this before we?
Yes, we may.
Mr. Clinch, could I ask Mr. Clinch to come forward? I'm not holding a Kelvin court
Calling
here
witnesses.
today.
Calling witnesses.
Mr. Clinch, would you or would you not? Mr. Clinch, I see this and I know we spoke briefly today about this. I just want to ask you a couple questions here for myself and for the board members. The company that was selected first here in 10.09 for our, to negotiate with, were they or were they not? There you go. The company that we had discussions with, not getting the work done when we had the Castaldi meetings about Gateway in the workshop, I'm gonna say, was it 6 months ago or longer?
It was longer than that. We actually started the Castaldi process in August of 18. And the first submission from BRPH for the Castaldi, the first report, the first draft, came to us about 6 months later. And it was not what we had directed. We had made it clear that Gateway High School was to be a comprehensive renovation. And what was proposed in the Castaldi was a clean slate to, remove all the buildings and do essentially a replacement.
So you're saying that this company did not complete the task that we asked them to do?
Not initially. So when we received that
They did
first-
6 months later after come to Jesus, as you put it, right?
Yes, sir. We had a meeting, a regrouping meeting, and we, confirmed to them what our initial direction was. And at that point in time, they assigned a Mr. Sean Tracy,
I know Mr. Tracy.
and he turned things around. He actually,
Tracy, is he with this company still?
no, he is no longer with BRPH. He left shortly after the completion of this task.
So board, I brought this up because, and thank you, Mr. Clinch. Mr.
Certainly.
Clinch, were you a part of the selection process?
No, sir, I was not.
Um,
The chief facilities officer is not involved in the RFQ selections because of potential conflict of interest reasons.
So board, my reason for bringing this forward is I remember this going back, a year ago now, or whenever it was exactly. I remember hearing about this company not getting this work done, and it's shocked me to then see that this is the company we selected then to be the architect on this work, and I don't want to put them down. I know they do good work. I know Mr. Tracy, and I'm sorry he's left, I know he does great work. But let them get their house in order, as we've heard tonight, and then we'll select them to do some architecture work. I want to direct my question now to Mr. Krubbenbacher, and my question is it the authority of the board to just say, let me see, move down the list, to just go to number 2?
You're asking under Florida purchasing rules?
Yes.
I need
Or do we have to restart and do this all over?
Well, if you went to number 2, number 1 gets to protest and tie us up. I'd like to go back and see how purchasing did this one. We may or may not have an issue. And if we do, I can tell you, I can make sure the contract ties them every
Well,
which
it's
way.
not just there's an issue, it's just that I feel like
Rewarding non-performance.
rewarding bad behavior.
Right. Mr. Booth, could I ask you to table it to the next meeting so I can sit? You had mentioned it before the meeting to me, and there wasn't time, purchasing had left to get their file and go, what did you do on this?
Let me ask Mr. Clinch if that's going to delay the project at all.
Initially, we were looking to get a design completed prior to the summer so we could get into our summer phase. At this point, based on that timeline to complete the design in order to get a project into construction, we would not be able to hit that summer window for the upcoming summer. So that being said, no, I don't think that it would delay it.
And just for my knowledge, just because I don't know if we've changed some of our processes on procurement here, but are we, was the selection committee aware of the Castaldi mishaps here?
There were three, of the 7 selection committee members, 3 of them are facilities
So
representatives.
they were aware.
So those 3 were aware, and I would suspect that they said something during the deliberations, but I did not question them, I didn't ask them, because I'm not allowed to discuss those deliberations with that selection committee until that item
But
clears the board.
But Mr. Krummelbacher, just selecting, say, the next on the list and moving forward, that's simply too tall a task.
No, I'm not saying it's not. I wanna go through that file first so that if we can do it, I'm assured you that you're dotting the i's to put us in the best position
And that would not delay the project if we held this off to the first meeting in September.
No, based on the current timeline, no, I don't think it would delay
So
things.
Board, I guess what I'll do with that recommendation is make a motion to table this until the first meeting in September, but that's certainly up to you.
Second.
I don't think we need to take a vote on that, it's just a table.
We do.
No.
We do. So,
All right, so we have a motion for tabling and a second by Ms. Castillo. Discussion, Tim.
I know you record reflected a motion to postpone, as I know what you mean.
got you.
So I don't know that I share your
That's
thoughts. I do share maybe your concerns, though. I'm fine with doing the postponement and all of us doing a little bit more due diligence, conversation, and background. I mean, BRPH has built schools in this community, has done good work, has done
Absolutely.
incredible work over the Space Coast, and you know, I mean, they're a very, very, very reputable firm. So
Yeah.
I don't know that, you know, for me, just because you know, they weren't able to deliver on the Castaldi originally, that would automatically exclude them in my mind, to be candid. I recognize it's a motion to postpone, so I guess I would maybe yield until I can talk to Mark and do a little bit more homework, and then we can deal with it when it comes back. Board, I would just share with you, though, with all due respect to Mr. Booth's position and comments, and maybe other members of the board, is just look at this and let's not decide what we are or aren't going to do based on one instance in time. And the reason I say that is, I mean, if that's the case, and we have significant issues at Toho High School, I mean, and if that's the case, and we would never bring that vendor back again, or if we had an issue at another school, I mean, we could quickly eliminate a lot of architects or builders or otherwise, simply because there was some element of their performance that they didn't do. Now, if there's gross negligence or a real lack of capacity to perform, then I'm 100% on board with you, and I'd be unhappy to learn that, but I'd be happy to support your position if that's what's revealed to me in my research. So I support the motion to postpone, but I do want to understand a little bit more some of the thoughts of maybe your department, Mr. Clinch.
Let me call the motion up for a vote then. And the motion to postpone by Mr. Booth, table, second by Ms. Castillo. How does the board,
Ask the attorney, whatever's correct.
how does the board vote?
Correct, is postponed.
All those in favor, please, aye.
Next meeting.
Aye.
Mr. Weisser, could I ask you one favor? Can you talk with me before you talk with staff?
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to create something that creates anybody challenging something.
That's good.
Thank you.
So next is attorney report.
Yes. In Tallahassee's never-ending efforts to assure that you have local control, they have adopted a template for charter schools that specifies the minimum term is 5 years. In my research again, talking with Tallahassee, they would conclude that anything less than 5, even if agreed to by both parties, would violate the law. We approved a couple with 3. We have a couple coming down the road, and I would ask for a motion for the authority for us to, for those that came through previously at 3, that we move them to 5 and we can clean it up and not have an issue.
Thank you, Frank. Is there any board member that wants to?
I do, but Clarence had his hand up.
Mr. Clarence?
Frank,
Yes.
does this include people that we give extensions of 1 year because they have problems?
That's one of the arguments I'm having with them right now, all right, because
We can't just give somebody who fails 5 more years.
I know, and so we're not dealing with that right now. We're only dealing with ones that we don't have issues with, all right? Like Kissimmee Charter. The problem is, they would say this: if you have problems and you give them 5, and you can terminate them. And I think one of their rationales on the 5 is, in order for some of them to get financing, it helps them get financing. So they're gonna stick hard with the 5-year term.
May I just ask for a point of clarification,
Yeah.
because the agenda item reads that we're requesting that the school board approve a 5-year renewal contract for the following charter schools, UCP and Kissimmee Charter.
Right, those are the only two that I'm,
Okay,
yes, I'm sorry if when I said those, I meant those two.
just those two.
Those two. Yeah, thank you, Dr.
Clarence,
Pace.
you,
I guess what you just said concerns me a little bit. We give them 5 years and then we just terminate them. I don't know if the termination rules are a little different than just not renewing a contract, and I'd like
Oh, they're a
to-
lot different.
Well, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
giving them 5 years gives them a leg to stand on in court would be my guess, as
Yes,
opposed to not renewing their contract, that being the
yes.
case.
My question
This
was,
concerns me a lot.
sorry, I gotta get this in. My question
Go
was,
ahead.
we just did this 1-year extension with the virtual school that we've had so much trouble with. What, they're not on
We're
here.
not going, let's not talk about it. They haven't come forward and I'm not dealing with
Okay,
that, all right?
okay.
We are
Sorry,
dealing with,
Frank.
So just to make sure that the board is fully aware, this is a request to extend the contracts for UCP Osceola Charter School and Kissimmee Charter Academy,
That's it.
with which we've not had issues or concerns, to a 5-year term as opposed to the 3-year term that the staff originally recommended,
and they have,
based on guidance from DOE and Frank.
so on that specific, with that specificity, I'm gonna just go down the line to see if anybody has any more
Just
discussion.
these
or
two.
comments. Mr. Thacker, are you okay?
Just a comment, I don't think this is gonna work the way that they want it to, because if somebody's marginal and their 5 years are up, it's gonna be easier to say no than extend it for 5 years.
Could be.
and surprisingly, I got told that.
I don't know if this is the right time to have this conversation because clearly the motion is to renew the contract for 2 schools. But I emailed you with regards to some of my questions, which go right in line with
Right.
Mr. Thacker's questions. What if they're on a performance, what if they have financial
If
issues,
these were
performance issues? Are we
performance
allowed to
issues,
intervene?
you would see me recommending to Dr. Pace a whole different approach. You wouldn't hear
When?
me saying
At
do
2 years, at 3 years?
I would wanna look at the facts like we did on the one. I supported it, and you might hear me saying, based upon the facts, deny the non-renewal, let's terminate them. We're not gonna take the chance.
Okay, if you and I can sit down and talk about the termination process, because, obviously, these are the rules that are coming down from Tallahassee, and I understand that we are to accept them.
Right.
But I'm really uncomfortable with giving a school 5 years without any kind of review. I
Oh,
guess
they've
that's
been-
my question.
They've been reviewed, these two have
Not
been.
these specific schools.
Yeah.
We're clear that these schools are not under any
Let me tell
performance
you.
review. I'm just talking about
There are effectively 2 ways to terminate. One's an emergency termination where it's health, safety, and welfare, like we ran into
Mhm.
that thing.
Yeah.
The second one is a 90-day notice to cure, and then they haven't cured defects, and you terminate. And what this is gonna do is what they're putting on us is, you're to hold charter schools accountable, and if they're not performing, then don't give them the 5 years. Non-renewal, in my opinion, that's where they're headed.
Yeah, that's really murky to me.
Yeah, so
So
I'll
I
get with you
think
more
that I
on
need
it.
to sit down and really talk
It
and
is
actually
murky, so they can
see the
second guess
language.
us.
I think that you wanna understand this rule as it could affect other charters.
Well,
and
yeah, I mean,
I
of
think that's a good
course.
point.
It's gonna be a problem with poor performing, I can tell.
Mr. Whiteside, you
Right.
had the light up.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot, it was a lot.
Where's his leg?
With these, and I only mentioned these meaning the 2 that are on our agenda, just to be clear, it would, how long ago did we renew their contracts? 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
No, within the last several months.
February.
What happened was,
Okay.
this got raised to
Oh,
us.
the one, okay, I see it in front of me.
They were in
Approved on February
agreement
18th.
and then it got raised in an odd way to us and we gotta deal with it.
Okay, let me ask this, cause I may have lost it in the discussion here tonight. at this point in time, Mr. Kuppenbacher, are you still asking us to approve this tonight, or are you going to be circling up with us and then bring it back for us to approve?
I'm asking you to approve it. These three, I can tell you legally, we have no issues with them. We'd have no basis not to give them the 5. We gave them 3. It's letting us change it to 5 and be done with them.
Okay, Dr. Pace, do you happen to recall when we did the renewal on these 2 that I see in front of me? Were there any concerns at that time from the board about renewal, and was the recommendation from staff for a 3-year renewal, or was it a recommendation for 5 and the board decided to do 3?
I believe, sir, that the recommendation for both of these was a 3-year renewal. That has been my standard since I became the superintendent. I can't tell you specifically, but that has just kind of been my standard, is that I believe a 3-year contract is satisfactory, because it still allows us after a 3rd year to review what's happening at the particular school. But Mr. Kuppenbacher and this group have brought it to our attention that that's not really what the new DOE guidelines have indicated, but I have no qualms whatsoever about a 5-year contract for either one of these schools.
We
They
checked it very
perform well
carefully.
in the populations that they serve.
Thank you. And part of the reason I ask is, as you know, there are times where there'll be a recommendation for renewal of any period of time, and the board has amended those recommendations and shortened the time period.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that we're not unknowingly undoing something that we discussed or did just
No, sir.
7 months ago, whatever the math is.
No.
The other thing, of course, I do recognize that there are still regular reviews and accountabilities that are in place. So it's not like, for the benefit of the public, it's not like this is just a 5-year have at it and that's it. There is an ongoing review from our choice department in what's happening in all areas of the school, including looking at the academic and financial well-being and performance of the school. So the measurements are still in place based upon the existing laws that govern how authorizing or chartering boards ultimately approve charters to function and operate within the district. And then to your point, Mr. Kuppenbacher, we do still have the 2 provisions that we can leverage if needed as a board for termination should there be a health, safety, or welfare concern, or a lack of ability to perform either academically or financially. So,
And what I was surprised at was how adamant it was expressed to me from Tallahassee. If you have concerns, don't renew. I mean, if they're that serious, we don't want you to give them another contract, because it just means we'll all end up embarrassed. So they're shifting from where they used to be about leave them alone to hold them accountable.
Thank you, Frank.
so with all that, I would speak in favor of approval and recognizing the guidance of our council on this.
Mr. Whiteside, we're still waiting for a motion.
So moved.
And I'll second and.
With discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Booth.
I can approve this going forward. I'd just like to say, I think Mr. Thacker brought it up. And I'd say actually it is a little bit of, I disagree just a tiny bit with Mr. Weischer, because it is a little bit of do whatever you want for 5 years, because it's extremely hard to terminate. It's extremely easy to not renew. And so I see what they're doing here, and you know how they love local control. All I'll say, and I hope that boards going forward after November when I'm not here, is that you better bring your A game when you're a charter school now. And I would think this board should take an even longer, harder look at any charter school now that we're going. And look, I'm a pro school choice guy, and I think we have some great charter schools in our community. But you better bring your A game now to get a 5-year contract.
All right, so you want another comment?
I think something that's important to note, Board, is that a lot of times what we inherit in this district related to laws and rules governing charters are reactions to bad behavior of other districts within the state. And so this board has continually put in place, I believe, the right measurements, review, accountability, recommendations. And we have been very clear that if you can come in and prove that you will perform, then we want you here, and we recognize that you provide a valuable opportunity for choice and education for our community. If you can't, then we don't. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case in all districts across the state of Florida. And so what happens, as happens many times with most laws, is you have a couple bad actors, and then we all inherit a new rule or a new law as a result of that. So I think it's going to be very important as well, just from my perspective, that the future board, superintendent, and staff take that still measured, objective approach in looking at charter applications and renewals, recognizing that we've been able, and Dr. Pace, you know this exceptionally well, as do I know you, Mr. Thacker, we've been able to make a very significant argument in Tallahassee of how Osceola has really, in a lot of ways, been the model district in the state of Florida, how we truly have tried to look at equity and access for everybody, including choice programs. And it would be a step in the wrong direction if this board of this district started to go in a different direction of that, and we became one of those bad actors that were so upset or so obstinate that we started to deny things just because we had, a thorn in our side over it, as opposed to fair, honest, and objective analysis to back it up.
Mr. Chairman, let me just, go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I would agree with what Mr. Booth said. Bring your A game, not in a sense that we're, in any way, shape, or form, not being as open to choice, but because we have such a long time to be able to review this, we want to make sure that this is the right option. So as somebody who is going to stay on this board moving forward, I do want to recognize that I understand the spirit of what Mr. Booth was saying, and that I support his statement. Dr. Pace, I would really like to get together with you to understand this review process, because the way that I have seen charter school renewals come to me is I either see them when their renewal process is coming up at 3 years, or when something extreme is happening. And I think that we might need to have some discussion as to whether or not we can have a process where the board gets to see the health of that school between year 1 and 5, and not at year 1, year 5, or when something extreme happens. So that's my 2 cents. Again, agree with what we're doing here in this particular case. We're only talking about 2 schools, but I can see that this is going to open up some additional discussion, and I really want to make sure that we have all of that straightened out before we have the next renewal process coming up.
And absolutely, so you all follow up to have a meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Soto,
Hold on a
just
second.
quickly,
Hold on.
Mr. Weisshire, I want to let you know, he is exactly, every time, we have a very good relationship with school choice in Tallahassee, right? I talk with them a lot. Every time we come across a rule like this, and I comment about what brainchild with this, they always pinpoint exactly to the district that created the problem and say, Frank, well, this is because of X county. And it's exactly right. The other thing is, Terry, what you bring up, I would just say to the whole board, my opinion, you hold charter schools accountable just like you hold your superintendent and our schools accountable. And if they're not performing the way you wouldn't tolerate it at one of our schools, then I think you take on the issue.
Hold on. This is a very interesting and important topic. Mr. Booth, final words, or not even final words, they could be middle words. You good?
I'm done.
Mr. Weisshire, middle words, final words. Mr. Thacker, you have any? Ms. Castillo, any other thing? I know that you brought up a lot of good points.
I'm all settled.
You get them all
Thank
on
you,
the table?
Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Cooper-Bucker, anything final before I call for a vote on this? I believe we have a motion and a second.
No, sir.
Very well, then we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
I said aye.
Oh, you did?
That was in unison, it was harmony.
Okay, so it passes 5-0. Bring up your next item, Mr. Cooper-Bucker.
Members of the board, on a very positive note, I am reporting to you and confirming that each one of you, in your individual evaluations of the superintendent's performance, has determined that the superintendent has met each goal established by the board in conjunction with her. And I would say that her performance, I haven't seen a better one in my entire career. It's just proud to work with this lady. And you were all very thoughtful, and just affirming that for the record. If anybody disagrees with me, let me know. And
Before we move forward,
Hold on.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask?
There wasn't even, are you making a recommendation so that we can make a motion upon?
if you want to make a motion confirming my comments, that'd be great.
Oh, okay.
Do we need to move on this and approve this or not?
I would make, I don't think you need to, I'm asking you, it would be nice for the record, but if you don't,
your legal counsel be that I abstain from this vote?
yes, Mr. Booth.
I'll make a motion to
For
accept
the-
the evaluation.
All right, so we have a motion to accept and a second by Ms. Castillo.
For the record, Mr. Booth is abstaining because he is related to the
Very well,
superintendent.
so,
And will
go ahead and
file the
call for a vote.
appropriate form with Ms. Goldberg.
oh. And does anyone have any comments or discussion or questions in this time? Vice Chair, the floor is yours.
This will be my last opportunity to review the superintendent, and Dr. Pace, every year I've had an opportunity to do an evaluation on you has truly been a joy, to be honest. But this year was the most enjoyable for me. You have continued to shine and perform at a level beyond even maybe what I thought when I first interviewed you all those years ago, and we had those conversations upstairs and in different conference rooms in this building. This district is fortunate to have you. You are a shining star, not just in this community, but across the state of Florida. I'm sure nationwide when we look at superintendents, but someone who understands the landscape across the state of Florida when it comes to education, you really are the shining star in my book. And I just got to tell you, it was genuinely my honor to do this evaluation of you and to say publicly to the community that they are very, very blessed and very fortunate to have you. And you work tirelessly. I mean, almost, like Jay Wheeler would say, you've got to rest, those type of things. Like, I would almost take up that mantle, I'm not going to because it's a Jay Wheeler comment, but I say that because you are non-stop, and you lead, you live, you breathe, and you eat your work, and your passionate dedication is evident in everything you do and every conversation that you and I have. So keep doing great things. I know you will, and it's an honor to serve with you.
You would miss if I didn't allow every school board member to make a comment on this evaluation. Mr. Booth, even though you are abstaining.
Look, I guess it's my last time to do that. I'll be here
That's right.
to abstain from this evaluation.
That's right.
But I can tell you that even though I didn't get to make that vote, I think it's pretty obvious to this community that I was in full support of Dr. Pace being our superintendent. There's no doubt about that. And I can tell you right now that there's no tougher job in the nation, maybe besides being a governor of a state. There's no tougher job than being a superintendent of a school district. And I would say Florida even more so because we have so many large school districts. And so Dr. Pace has performed beautifully, and we appreciate everything that she's done. Deborah has done a fantastic job. She's an awesome superintendent. And whichever 2 or 3 extra people sit up here, I guess it'll be 3 extra people, would be ridiculous to ever entertain the thought of terminating her contract moving forward. And I'll come and stand at that podium if I have to say it 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, or 4 years from now.
Choice words by Mr. Booth. Mr. Thacker.
Let my review stand for itself. I do consent.
Very well, Mr. Thacker. Ms. Castillo.
I, of course, agree with what everybody has said. You are a true leader, and I've seen you work under so much pressure. I can't imagine, we have community members who are under a lot of pressure, but I know that you take it on. You care about this district, you care about your teachers, you care about the students, but I also think that you bring such a level of expertise. I have never asked you a question and you're like, I have no idea, so I appreciate that you make our jobs easier because you are so willing to be open and take our calls and entertain all of our questions. So that makes my job a lot easier, and we are better for it. Osceola County School District is better for it. So thank you so much.
All right. And last but not least, Dr. Pace, well done. And with that, I call for a vote. All those I was gonna say Bravo Zulu, but didn't have to explain it. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Passes 4-0 with 1 abstention. And I think that's it for Mr. Group.
I have one last thing.
We can come up with something else for him.
For those members remaining on the board There is a board member in the state, an issue has arisen with regard to a public records request of a board member's Facebook.
Facebook?
Our
We're not
personal
getting
This is gonna be
Facebook,
such an interesting
Personal
discussion.
Facebook
Talk about
or-
First Amendment.
Right, the Attorney
Book
General's
IP.
office has opined that Facebook can't be used to communicate among board members like this one, so, right, number one. Number two,
anyway.
to the extent you use your Facebook to communicate on views regarding the school district, if it's a private Facebook, you're opening it up to at least be looked at by a judge as to what's public and what isn't. So I just caution you, if anybody's using Facebook on the board, that issue has now popped up. And I want you to be aware of it.
Mr. Weishaar, would your opinion be the same for MySpace?
It definitely is,
They'll never get my Facebook.
and that tweeter thing you talk about, Mr.
Mr. Thacker has a Facebook, he just doesn't know.
No, this Facebook thing is ripe for so much discussion and fun, but Mr. Kupenbacher, is there anything else?
No,
Very well, so guys, just to know, it seems as though some Facebooks have been used to communicate and that is gonna be falling into
Board,
public.
if you don't mind, just a quick comment, I can tell you what I did, that is Heather back there.
Yeah.
I can tell you on my Facebook, and Heather knows, that if you send me a message, that an individual sends me a message, they get an automatic reply that says that I do not communicate via Facebook, that you will have to email me at my email address. And so that reply comes automatically if anybody sends me an email, but I don't think that's what we're discussing.
That's your personal Facebook?
No,
or
that is
your
my,
board?
that is the
Okay.
district-run
Alright,
Facebook.
'cause
You know
those
what,
are
to close this
different.
topic, maybe you can put something together, especially for the new board.
No, I don't mind, I just wanted to let
I
you
will.
know, if
Because
you
you know we
haven't
go
done
through-
that already, you should do
Because
it.
what-
Because you know, we go through that training about it,
alert
I'm
you
pretty sure
because what
FSBA
we
is
see
gonna
in
go
this
into
state is people that literally travel in these attacks. So if they go, like, for example, Pasco got served last week with a lawsuit from the union over there. There's now a firm out of New York that literally filed a lawsuit in New York against every school district in the nation. Right? I don't quite get that, but I just want you to know when it hits, I'm gonna let you know so we don't get hit.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, so we'll go into number 17, superintendent's update.
Yes, sir. I did want to share with the board because we were unable to have our health insurance workshop tonight. You might want to look at your calendars and email us some dates in September. We don't meet on the 1st, we meet on the 8th. That is our budget meeting. So I don't know if we want to meet then, but the 3rd, whenever this other meeting in September might want to be a good day to reschedule the health insurance workshop. But some exciting news I just wanted to highlight for you and our community. For the 1920 fiscal year, payments made through July the 31st, this is late breaking news from Cigna today, our total medical spend was down 12.2%, very different trend than what we've experienced.
That's right.
Our total pharmacy spend was down 7.9%, and so overall we had an 11.3% reduction in medical and pharmacy expenses. The total plan spend, because you also have to factor in your administrative costs and things, was down 8.2%. So that is a very good positive. The only drawback to that is our concern that during the pandemic in the spring, people have not been seeking the preventative care that they so desperately need to stay healthy. So that is something that our health center is really pushing hard to advocate for those healthier habits, healthier programs this fall as we launch a new network. I also wanted to share with you some other exciting news. I know that we have talked at times about trying to expand the access of our Center for Employee Health because currently we just have the one location on Simpson Road. Through a partnership at no cost to the district, we are going to have 2 mornings a week on Mondays and Monday morning 7 to 12, and on Friday afternoons from 12 to 5. Two of the medical providers from our center over here on Simpson Road will go to the location at the Florida Lung Asthma Sleep Office, which is at 4553 Pleasant Hill Road. So the only cost is the same overhead that we're currently paying for those 2 employees at our health center, but this will give us an alternative location for the number of people out in the Poinciana medical community. So we'll start communicating that to our employees. I just wanted the board to hear about it first. So I felt like that was really very good news. That's all I have for that until back to school update.
All right, so, Mr. Whiteside.
Yeah, just share with our providers, I went in for my regular wellness checkup and blood work and everything, I think it was last week, and I had to go to our wellness center, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago for my back, and exceptional service, quality service. I couldn't have been more pleased with the individuals there, so just share that back. I would have shared it today in our workshop had that taken place, but as being a user and a consumer of the service, I have a very I have the ability to analyze it objectively from firsthand experience. So please share my comments with Kenneth and the team.
We'll be sure to do that.
Okay, anybody else on this item before we go to the back to school update? No? All right, Ms. Pace?
I just have a few short things to share with the board tonight. As I've already shared with you, our local data is trending in the right direction. As of last Friday, enrolled in focus for district managed schools, that means our district schools plus Villa Lago, we had 52,762 students, and of those, 23,961 have been identified as digital learners. So that means we're sticking right at that 45%, 45.4% are taking digital learning as it stands right now. We are still working on some schedules, working out some bumps in the road, people changing their minds, but we're hoping to narrow that down. And we've ended up now with 874 full-time students at Osceola Virtual School. So good numbers there. District enrollment is gradually increasing, getting back to being closer to where we thought we would be at projection. And as of right now, we do have, as Ms. Leone mentioned, 608 teachers who volunteered to take on that simultaneous instruction of digital and face-to-face at the same time. Because we've recognized that that is a significant additional challenge to manage that face-to-face and digital environment simultaneously, this district did commit to offering an extra period supplement to those teachers, and we're one of the only districts right now that I know of who is doing that. I'm hoping this won't last forever, but we appreciate the extra responsibilities that those teachers are taking on. We are currently in the process of trying to distribute laptops and masks and curriculum materials to our digital learners. We'll have one more day for that on Thursday of this week when teachers are working in their classrooms. Right now, the challenge is the balance between meeting the needs of our digital learners and also keeping enough technology on hand to serve our face-to-face students for both the learning and the assessment that we know is so critical. We have issued laptops, or we have enough laptops prepared, and we're currently in the process of issuing them to all third graders in the district. We are about 2/3 of the way through with getting iPads to all of our kindergarten students. And we learned today that we do have an additional 1,500 Dell laptops that are on their way. We originally thought it was going to be October, November before we could get our hands on them, but they should be here soon. We also had some good news this afternoon in that the state is making available through the governor's economic recovery funds about $30 million for districts for PPP expenses, the masks, the gloves, the cleaning supplies that we had purchased. Originally, we were told that we were going to be able to seek FEMA reimbursement for those, at least 80%. Then we were told, sorry, even though we've already spent several $1 million on these important supplies to protect our students and our staff. But today we were told just late that the governor is making some of those monies available for reimbursement. So Sarah and Leslie and the team will be working on that this afternoon and next week. Finally, I just wanted to say, reminder to parents, school schedules, Monday morning, bright and early. We'll start at 7:20 for our high school, 7:10, I believe, for Neo City, 8:20 for our elementary schools, and 9:20 for our K-8s and middle schools. That's district-wide, so that's whether you're a face-to-face learner or a digital learner. We want our students logged in and ready for that important day of learning. The schools are going to be posting bell schedules on their web pages, as well as then using them and making them available during their open house Flipgrid shows on Friday. Transportation remains a struggle right now. As I've shared with the board, shared with the community, we are short bus drivers. We have added routes in order to accommodate the 2 people per seat. We're just asking for everybody's patience, especially during that first week. We're going to have all hands on deck in terms of people who have their CDLs with that S endorsement ready to drive kids just to and from school. But we know that it's going to take us a couple of days to work out where we have too many kids, where we have too few kids, and getting kids to school on time. So just asking for everybody's patience in those first couple of days. More so than ever, compassion and grace is gonna be needed by everybody. But thank you, that's all I have unless you have questions.
Any questions? Let me go down. Mr. Thacker, Ms. Castillo.
I'll go with you about the additional 1,500 computers. Are those gonna be distributed for, well, I guess I'm asking. Are those gonna be distributed for those folks that are on a wait list? Okay, that's what Karen's asking, thank you.
So they're gonna get it soon.
Now, they're not gonna be here Monday.
No,
No,
they're gonna get it soon.
got it, thank you so much.
Good, absolutely, good clarification. Mr. Weissier. Mr. Booth.
I'm good.
All right, so before we close up on the back to school update, Dr. Pace, you really went into, because of the contract item that came up on the testing, I want to share an article with you that I would ask you to read. It's a long read, but I really will suggest that you read it.
Yes, sir.
And then, once you've read it, use your judgment as to whether you want the other board members to read it as well. Here's the highlight about it, is that, it really explains testing. It's a scientific article, but it's not hard to read, trust me, even I could read it. Here's what's interesting. There's a lot of different testing, and there's this company called e25bio.com. And once you read it, see if there's anyone, yes ma'am?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, because maybe you know about it. I'll share the article it's on my Facebook. Look at that.
Ah, no Facebook.
That's where I put the article.
Heather.
I don't use Facebook I don't use Facebook to send messages to you guys. I read and I post it there so my kids can read it. But in any case, e25bio.com, and maybe you could have some of your staff really look into that. I'm curious about it, and I think you will be as well.
Certainly.
That was it on that one. So, new business. Any new business? Now, board member comments before I adjourn. Anything? No?
I have one quick comment. Sarah Graver, thank you. The board, as you know, Sarah sent an email out around to everybody regarding the difference in the funding that takes place with the flex funding and the difference between virtual education and in-person education, which I know we talked about it in pretty good detail, Sarah, and I think it's important information for people to know and understand. And some would view it as a penalty. It's really just a continuation of existing funding policy, that if it's a virtual education or distance education, but the impact to the district would be $125 million if we didn't open schools brick and mortar and only received FTE at the rate that we would have otherwise received it for virtual. And of course, we know that $125 million to our operational budget just decimates this district and means that there's job losses that are beyond what anybody would probably be willing to understand or accept. So it was just part of our conversation, and I want to say thank you for doing the analysis, providing it not just to me, but to all the board members. So thank you.
Tim, that was very good for you to break that up. Had I had that in mind, there would have been so many opportunities to bring that up during this meeting because it wasn't excellently prepared. I ask a lot of questions that I kind of know the answer, but the reason that I want staff to go ahead and be able to put it out there is because of the credibility and the attention to detail that is given. And you took my question and you responded to that with that email, which I think it was very illuminating. Not just for us, but I think that that's something that I would, as Mr. Weissier just did, share that with the community that, these are tough choices that we're making, and everything has to be balanced, and only through teamwork and getting people involved and careful and deep analysis, Dr. Pace is able to make these decisions and have us involved with them to help her, because it's just too much for just one person. Because this is so many parts. There's no easy way out of this. We didn't ask for COVID. It is a natural phenomenon, a horrible thing, once in a generation. And we're committed to doing everything we can so that on the 24th we start off well. But there's going to be things that are going to occur, and we have to respond quickly to it. And that testing and that article and my recommendation on that, I hope that you could look into that and share with the rest of the board.
Yeah, and board, I'm sure you saw it. Hillsborough County tried to take a different position and
And it
quickly
didn't work
realized that it was over a $200 million hit.
Yeah.
I was notified as soon as that happened what their vote was, and I was like, I'm not sure they really understand the financial impacts of what that
And
is. So
it can't be ignored.
No,
We have to think about that. We just can't act like if that doesn't exist. and I hope that your efforts reach over there as well, because those are the folks that are really calling the shots on this. When you're talking about that much money being withheld, you know.
Well, you just trigger funding at a different level. It's not even about being withheld as much as it is that you then fall into a different funding bracket and funding category.
Exactly.
And it's a category that's always existed and it's always functioned the way that it is, so. Anyway.
But it doesn't allow us to do the things that we're used to doing here.
Right.
All right, so with that, we'll go ahead, Mr. Roof, I gotta call on you.
I'm good.
Then I'll call this meeting adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
It's Brian Bailey.